Welcome to the Vol Bros. My name is Evan. This is my brother Rustin. We'll explain his name on the screen in just a moment. We are two Vol Bros who are actually bros. So I love the fact that he has Mr. Dark Hat on his screen right now, because that came from one of our wonderful watchers on YouTube. I'm not sure why he chose to call Rustin Mr. Dark Hat, because Rustin's name was on the screen. And so, but in our predictions video for 2023, a gentleman commented and said, "Some pretty arrogant commentary there, Mr. Dark Hat."
Granted, this was immediately after I picked his team, the Georgia Bulldogs, to beat Tennessee next year. Apparently, me picking his team was not good enough, and reading my name on the screen was way too complicated.
So I replied back to the gentleman and thanked him so much for watching and for also giving us a great new nickname for Rustin. So, so I'm Evan. This is Mr. Dark Hat. I think the guy's name was James. Thank you, James, if you're watching right now. I appreciate that. We are live on 3 platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And so if you would like to join us, we would love that. I'm actually going to post a comment right here in the comments right now that if you want to join us on screen, you can. We would love that. If you want to join us on screen so people can hear your voice, but you don't want them to see you, you can turn your camera off, I guess. So I just put that on Facebook and Facebook and YouTube, sorry. And I'll put it on Twitter here in just a moment. We'd love to have you interact with us in the comments as well. Vols coming off a win tonight, and that's our first topic. The BasketVols won against Mississippi State at Mississippi State tonight, 70-59, and I believe that score is somewhat deceptive. It looks like it was a comfortable win. It certainly was not, and we'll talk more about that. Rustin, what were your initial reactions to that game this evening?
I had a lot of reactions. I think the first thing that stood out was, obviously Tennessee was shorthanded. Tyreek Key and Santiago Vescovi didn't play. I think we learned a lot about some of our young guys. Julian Phillips stepped up, played some huge minutes. Zakai Ziegler in the second half just decided we were winning. I mean, that's all it came down to. He was hitting big shot after big shot. Josiah played his role well. When he got his opportunities, he jumped in and made an impact. And he also understood when to step back and let Zakai and Julian do their thing. I thought that was impressive for a senior to step back and say, hey, these two guys are hot. We're going to keep feeding them the ball. I was happy to see Olivier Kumwa hit the 3 he hit late in the game. For him, honestly, for his confidence. That kid drives me crazy. He has all the talent in the world. When he's playing at his best, he's an absolute first-round NBA draft pick. And then he just disappears for games and halves and long spurts of time. And, tonight was a night when they really needed him, and he was AWOL in the first half. He might as well not have been in uniform in the first half. And so it was good to see him kind of rebound. In the second half, he had 7 points and 4 rebounds, which if he plays that way the whole game, that's 14 and 8. We'll take 14 and 8 from him every night of the week. I do not understand why he can't put it all together. But for some reason, he just can't seem to ever show up for 40 minutes. But in spite of that, if you had told somebody before the night, hey, Tennessee's going to score 23 points in the first half, Tyreek Key and Santiago Vescovi aren't going to play, and Olivier Kumwa isn't going to score in the first half, I think they would have expected probably a 30 or 35-point loss. So to get away with an 11-point win is huge.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Certainly the tale of two halves, right? That second half team is what we saw offensively, like we saw against Mississippi State the first go around, and who they played the other game that week, that they had just an incredible week. It was another SEC team. I can't remember who it was. But they had 2 back-to-back games that were just incredible offensive production. And that's what we saw. Zachary Whitfield on YouTube said, "What's up, Vol fan? Great win tonight. I still think Tennessee's going to win the SEC championship." Oh, they certainly can. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if they play like they did in the second half tonight.
Yeah.
Certainly can.
They're the best defensive team in America. They might be the only team that can hold Bama down enough to outscore them. It's going to be a tall order. Alabama's playing at a really high level right now. But they have the ability to shut people down. They make great defensive adjustments. I mean, look at tonight. Tonight they made a fantastic adjustment in the second half where they started really communicating who was going over and under screens, and instead of switching them, they really started hedging well and making sure shooters didn't get opportunities. And they did a fantastic job defensively all night, adjusting to everything Mississippi State was doing.
Yeah. I love what Zachary said right here. I would join you on screen, but I feel like Mississippi State played, which is bad. Hey, we totally understand, Zachary. We appreciate you watching, man. We appreciate you commenting. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was, my goodness, Julian Phillips and Zakai Ziegler in the second half, they put the team on their backs, man. There was one move Julian Phillips made. We were sitting there, we were playing a board game as a family as we were watching it, and he did a spin move reverse layup through the lane, and I was like, "Whoa, nice move!" I mean, like it was a really, really, I mean, that was a pro level play for sure.
If I'm thinking of the same one you are, what I really appreciated about that was it was off a set play where he caught the ball on essentially the wing closest to us if we're watching the ball or watching the game on television. And he immediately attacked the basket and made a spin move in the lane.
Yeah.
I think what I liked most about that was Rick Barnes called a set play to get Julian Phillips a one-on-one isolation move. He was recognizing, Coach Barnes isn't big on set plays. He likes a lot of motion offense. He likes to, create opportunities off of motion. But in the second half tonight, he called a lot of quick hitters and sets to get guys specific shots. And honestly, I love that. I love that he said, hey, we're not going to mess around anymore. We're going to get our guys the ball where they need it, and we're going to go score.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about that second half, well, I'll tell you what, to lead into that, let's do this, because I think we're probably going to say the exact same person. Who was your player of the game tonight?
I think traditional thought would say Zakai Ziegler because he had just a fantastic second half. But honestly, I felt like Julian Phillips turned the tide.
Yeah, that's fair.
In that kind of first 8 minutes of the second half, I thought there were moments when Julian was absolutely dominating the game. And if he hadn't had that stretch over the 8 minutes, I'm not sure we're in that game at the end. So I gave my player of the game to Julian Phillips.
So I lean towards your first thing there, Zakai Ziegler. He was my player of the game. Like you said a minute ago, he just decided, okay, we're not going to lose. I mean, imagine being Zakai Ziegler in the locker room before the game starts, and you know that the other two primary offensive weapons are not playing. Also, the other two primary ball handlers. So you know that literally you're running the show. I mean, it's on you. It is on him tonight. He's running the show. Did he come off the court for 1 second the whole night? I don't think he did. I think he played all 40 minutes.
So.
And you think about that and his defensive output in the second half. My goodness, there's like 3 minutes left in the game, and he's flying all over the place, jumping screens, and I mean, like it was incredible. Much like in baseball. Okay, Zachary said Josiah was his player of the game. He stepped up big time. Absolutely, he sure did. He had some very important shots.
He did.
Much like baseball, hits are contagious. Shooting is contagious in basketball. When you see the ball going through the nets, all of a sudden that rim gets bigger for everybody. I don't know what causes it, but that's just the way it is. And that happened tonight. And Zakai Ziegler was a spark for that. Mm-hmm. And he hit 3 threes really early in the second half. And I mean, no hesitation. Like there was one guy went underneath the screen and he just immediately pulled the trigger and drilled it, There
was a couple of them I wondered if Key and Vescovy had been playing, if he would have taken the shot.
Right, exactly.
Was he confident because he knew they can't take me out anyway? Like there's nobody else.
Exactly. If you're open, let it fly kind of thing. And he sparked that in the second half. And I say that to say this, our next question is what's your play of the game? Well, my play of the game, I think, is a result of the success Tennessee had shooting the ball, but because he's seeing other people, the ball going through the nets. My play of the game was the Kamwa 3. Talk about unexpected. Somebody tweeted as Kamwa was shooting, he was like, "Oh no, what do you do? Hey, great shot!" And I was like, "Exactly. No. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's great." It obviously caught the defender by surprise too.
Yeah,
because here he makes a ball fake, and all of a sudden, boom, he's pulling the trigger, and man in his face. I mean, that was an awesome shot. And I think the reason that was the play of the game for me was because that late in the game, he hits that shot, and you could just feel Mississippi State just deflate, like, oh man, we really ain't winning this,
Yeah,
like
the air came completely out of the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, if he's making that shot, oh man, this is not going to be easy, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's why that was the play of the game to me. What was your play of the game?
I almost picked that for the same reason. You could tangibly feel the arena basically give up in that moment. Yeah. But I decided against that one, and with 9 minutes left, Julian Phillips got a dunk. We were down 46-44 at the time. He got a dunk, tied it up at 46. We never relinquished the lead. We led or tied the final 9 minutes of that game.
Starting with the follow-up dunk off the rebound? Is that what that was? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that one kind of surprised me because when he caught that, he wasn't that close to the rim, and he wasn't that high off the ground when he caught it, and he just kept going up and dunked it, and I was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. So that was 2 times tonight that Julian Phillips made me go, whoa.
Yeah.
That play and the spin move both. I mean, those are some nice plays.
That's why he's a 5-star.
Yep. Any other thoughts about the game tonight before we move on to our next topic?
Not really. I was, again, anytime you get a road win in the SEC, it's a positive. It's hard to win on the road in the SEC. To do it in that fashion, because what they all just learned. They all just learned that it doesn't matter what the scenario is, they can find a way to win.
Absolutely.
And honestly, Urosh didn't play that well. He did okay, but it wasn't really a factor. Kumwa in the first half was non-existent. When they're having to rely, Jonas Adu had a terrible first half. When they're having to rely on Tobe Awaka to be the only interior presence, that's not great.
Which I mean, he came in and handled his business. He played a good game. Adu had a much better second half. I mean, he was a defensive force in the second half.
Yeah, he did. They did. One thing that stood out that I never would have imagined. Did you hear in the second half when they gave the stat that right now Tobe Awaka is leading the country in rebounding percentage? They have a stat where they chart your minutes versus your total rebounds and the amount of shots that come off while you're in. And he is right now number 1 in the entire country in rebounding percentage per minute.
And see, so that's a good stat because, it's not like he's leading the country in field goal percentage and he's only taking like 2 shots. You know what I'm saying? Like anybody, that stat can apply to anybody because it's per minute you've played. So that's a really good stat.
And somehow now there's an algorithm out there that I can't understand that someone has created where they can actually chart how many shots are taken while you're in the game. So it's the percentage of rebounds that come off per minute that you pull down. And he's right now number 1 in the entire country in rebounding percentage, which is really hard to believe.
Well, so our next topic this evening, I'm telling you what, man, it's a good time to be a Vols fan. That's for sure. Because the Lady Vols are undefeated in SEC play to start SEC play this year. I'm telling you what, they had a great game this weekend. Was it Sunday? My days are running together. Yeah, I think it was Sunday. Summit blue uniforms. What do you think about those, by the way?
They're beautiful. I know the Columbia blue or Summit blue, whatever they want to call it, is kind of reserved for the Lady Vols. Tennessee football team used it for a wee back pat or whatever it was this fall, but I would love to see all the teams start incorporating some element of that into their uniform. It looked really good.
Yeah, I thought they looked great too. That Summit blue, man, that was sharp. And what a nice tribute to her, because for years the Lady Vols were the only team that had an element, a trim of that blue in their uniforms. Mm-hmm. And so what a tribute to Pat that way. I thought it was a great idea, and I thought it was pulled off really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zachary just said they play Sunday and Thursday. That's right. They do play Thursday. I appreciate you letting us know that, Zachary. That's exactly right. I'm glad you said that, because that reminded me to mention that they do play on Thursday. Yeah. He asked another question here, and that's a good one that we'll go back to here in just a second.
They don't know how long he'll be out. They said that he re-injured during the Kentucky game. We saw it live. He landed on his shoulder funny and re-injured the shoulder.
He was walking off the court doing like this.
Yeah. So he tried to go tonight. He went through warm-ups and they shut it down. Could tell he wasn't comfortable. So who knows how long he'll be out. With shoulders, it's a weird thing. Some people recover really fast. Some people, it lingers for long periods of time. I think Santiago is tough enough that if we get into a stretch run here where he's got to play, he'll just get some creative therapy and rehab attached to it. And he will play through it. It's amazing how good you can feel when the doctors give you the right things.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you've ever watched a game and a guy goes down really injured and they take him into that tent or they take him in the tunnel for a minute and all of a sudden he jogs back out and he looks great, there's a special shot he got while he's in that tent or in the huddle,
exactly,
in the tunnel, that makes that thing not hurt anymore.
Was it Paul Pierce? Is that who it was who got carried off the court one day in the NBA finals? And then all of a sudden he comes running back out,
Yep. Now the next day, it does not feel good when the stuff wears off.
Yeah, I believe
and the pain comes back. The next day is miserable, but in that moment, you don't feel a thing.
So, about the Lady Vols game 2 days ago on Sunday against Georgia, we mentioned the Summit Blue uniforms. They were excellent touch, in my opinion. Like I said, perfect tribute to Pat because they had the blue. But I'm telling you what, that was an enjoyable game to watch. Their ball movement in the second half, there was one, I'm thinking of one specific possession. They came down the court. The ball was in the corner on the side of the floor closest to the Lady Vols bench. It swung to the wing, to the opposite wing, to the opposite corner, back to the wing, to the other wing for a shot that they made. I mean, it was like crisp passes around the perimeter. And then they cap it off. Tess Darby hit a three to, it was just beautiful possession. It was fantastic. That's good ball, man. It's good basketball. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that they've been kicking tail right now in SEC play, and it's been fun to watch, and I hope they continue that this Thursday. Lady Vols undefeated so far. Any other thoughts about the Lady Vols?
If they're going to make a deep postseason run, they've got to figure out how to eliminate turnovers.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
They do a fantastic job sharing the ball, but they also are really bad about being careless with the ball. And they play so physical and they play so fast and they're so aggressive, it overshadows all the turnovers because they can. I mean, let's be honest. Right now, a lot of times they're winning ugly. They're turning the game into just a chaotic mess, balls flying all over the place, and because they're just more physical, they're winning all the hustle points, and they're it works for them. But if they're going to be, so like this Thursday they got Florida. If they play, it's at home. If they play the way they normally do, they should win that game. Sunday they've got Missouri at Missouri. That'll be a tough one. Missouri's playing pretty well. Then next week is when they find out what they're made of. Because next week they've got Connecticut on Thursday, or the following week they've got Connecticut on Thursday, and then LSU on Monday. So number 5 and number 3 in a span of 4 days. If they turn the ball over,
that's not an easy stretch there.
Yeah. If they turn the ball over in those 2 games like they have been recently, those are going to be 2 bad losses because those 2 teams will make them pay for it.
Let's hope they stay hot from the floor with Tess Darby shooting a ball and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Rakia Jackson shooting a ball.
Yeah, Rakia Jackson's playing out her mind right now. She's playing as well as anybody in the country. It's amazing. When they need a bucket, they just isolate for her, and she goes and finds a bucket.
Yeah. Zachary makes a good point. When they play South Carolina, that should be a good game. Yep. That'll be. Hey, talk about. I mean, if you got South Carolina, UConn, and LSU on your schedule, you're playing the cream of the crop.
Yeah. Good news is we get a month between Connecticut, LSU, and then South Carolina. South Carolina is not till the very end of the schedule. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I like how they're playing now. I like how athletic they're being. Again, I hate to harp on it, but they're 10-1 since Tamari Key went down. It's just a different team when they're not trying to play to her speed, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
And that one loss was to Stanford, number 2 team in the country. We're going to talk about some football now. Here with the Vol Bros, Evan and Mr. Darkhat. If you didn't hear why Rustin has that on his screen right now, you'll need to go back and watch the beginning of the show, or listen if you're listening on an audio podcast. Go back and listen to the beginning of it because it's a pretty funny story. But as we transition into football, that's how we're going to end our show. Is talking about there's a couple big football news from today. If you're getting, if you're enjoying this, we would absolutely love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. I think we're 2 people away from 700 subscribers right now, which is really exciting. So not that I've been like checking all day long or anything, but we so appreciate everybody who's been tuning in and everything. It's awesome. We've had a lot of people watching tonight, and that's awesome too. We love it when you interact with us. That's our favorite part. We actually just had a comment as I was saying that. Zachary said, "Thanks. I love that you cover everything Tennessee sports, including the women's VFL." Absolutely. Hey, Lady Vols.
Since you brought up everything, before we jump into football, let's talk about one quick thing because it came out today. There's like 87 different polls for college baseball. And another one came out today, and Tennessee's number 2 in that one. But I think what stands out the most is in all 87 polls, Tennessee is anywhere from number 1 to number 6. Nobody has them lower than 6, which is awesome to see. But then also today, the preseason AP poll for softball came out, and the Lady Vols are number 11 in the country. When you look across that entire athletic department,
it's incredible.
It's unbelievable. Like, we're in the top 15 in almost every single sport. And, by the end of the season, the Lady Vols are going to be there too. They're progressively climbing that ladder. Sure. If they can knock off one of those top 10 teams, they'll be back in the top 25 fast.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the country is noticing that they haven't lost in a long time. Like, the national media can't ignore that.
I saw a tweet today, and it was actually by TCU, but I think it was really impressive. Yeah. There are only 2 schools in the entire country who have football, basketball, and baseball in the top 15: Tennessee and TCU. That's it.
That's a good time to be a Vol. It's a good time to be a Vol. Like Andy Bernard said, I wish somehow you would know when you were in the good old days. Well, we're in the good old days right now, folks. That's what we're in right now. Zachary said Tony V has got that team on right track. My 2 favorite sports: baseball, softball. Yeah, Vol baseball. Hey,
loaded.
That's gonna be it's gonna be a fun year. It's gonna be a fun year. Blake Burke's swing it's like King Griffey Jr. It's so smooth. That's the immediate thing that reminds me of. It's just so smooth. Ed said, "Don't overlook men's tennis Vols." Hey, they're ranked like really high, I think, actually, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're in the top 10.
And if you know the exact number, you can let us know. But I saw that just the other day. Actually, they were in the Elite Eight last year, the year before that, something like that. Everything's cool. Everything's cool. Well, let's end the night show with some Tennessee quarterback, breaking news, not breaking news. This one came out last week. We haven't been live. Oh, thank you, Ed. Ed said number 6. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. This news came out last week. It was actually on last Friday when we had Coach Lance on our show. And so we were tweeting about Coach Lance, and we didn't have it. I mean, I think we retweeted something about this, but Taven Jackson transferred to Indiana. And I hate that, actually. Taven, you could tell he's a player. I mean, like you could tell when he got in the games this year, the way he threw the ball, even how he would change arm angles at times. And, if there's a defender coming in, he would drop down, sidearm it, I mean, like he was a player. Okay. So if he transferred, I know what that tells me, Rustin. What does that tell you? We haven't talked about this yet, by the way, but I'm curious. I think we probably have the same answer.
It tells me the reason that On3 made Nico the number 1 overall player in America today.
That's exact. And that was what I was going to say too.
Taven Jackson just went through bowl practices with Joe Milton and Nico, watching Nico throw the ball every day, watching him get reps. We talked about it. There's video footage of Nico running with the 2s during bowl practice, which means they had him ahead of Taven Jackson. How good does that kid have to be that he can walk in off the street and practice 3 or 4 against a former 4-star who had the entire offseason and year with the team and take reps from him?
That says a lot.
I don't know if Nico got ranked number 1 because Arch Manning lost his student ID twice in the first month he was at Texas. Which that might have had something to do with it.
You go on Twitter and search for that because it's pretty comical.
Yeah, I'm not joking. He lost his student ID twice in the first month he was on campus. So, maybe they're looking at that and going, hey, this kid's not going to do too well in the Wonderlic. But, for them to rank Nico above him in the final ranking means that people are seeing things.
So it's interesting, at the same, I'm sure it was by design, obviously, but today, Chad Simmons, who is a national recruiting director for On3 Sports, he wrote an article that was released early this afternoon, like right after lunchtime, I think. And it has some really interesting comments by Coach Heupel in it about Nico and what he's seen from Nico, what he saw in the recruitment process, and then what he has seen since then, since he got on campus. And so I'm going to put a link to this article in the comments right now. And that way you all can see this too, if you haven't seen it yet. It is very interesting to see his comments, and man, he's raving about him. Like even after he got on campus, he said, his arm just, it pops. That's what he's saying. It stands out to you. His athleticism, it pops. What was really interesting was his comments about watching Nico play volleyball and his athleticism and his quick twitch ability playing volleyball. That was something that impressed them so much. And so I really want to see the video footage of when they were at the Orange Bowl playing beach volleyball, seeing Nico like just destroy people with the ball. But that it's not a fluke that Nico arrived and a really, really good quarterback transferred. Now, obviously, we wish nothing but the best and nothing but success for Taven because, I mean, the kid's, he's legit. I mean, it was enjoyable to watch him play.
You're going to hear his name. He's going into a fantastic situation.
Absolutely.
Indiana just hired Walt Bell. Walt Bell's had a long career in Mike Norvell's system. He's got an air raid background. So, Taven Jackson's going to get to go into an offense where they're going to throw it all over the yard. and he's going to have the opportunity to come in and win the job right away. So it's a great opportunity for him.
Absolutely. So we wish nothing but the best for him. But I do think that it speaks volumes that he transferred. Like, I mean, common sense would dictate that if he felt like he was going to beat out if he was going to beat out Nico for the number 2 spot, he would have stayed.
Yeah.
Because then he knows he's taken over after next year when Joe leaves. And so I think this speaks volumes about Nico, and I'm about to say his last name for the first time in Volbro's podcast history, and I'm going to get it correct. I've practiced. I messed up.
Nope.
Lamaleava. There we go.
Nope.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's not.
Lamaleava.
Lamaleava. You've got the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Lamaleava.
And so, clearly Taven, he recognized, man, this kid's really good. And he felt like he wasn't going to beat him out. And so he went to it. I mean, I'm not Taven Jackson, so I'm assuming this, but it would seem as though that would be a correct assumption and a correct analysis of the situation.
And, you could kind of see it coming. There were pictures taken at the Orange Bowl of the quarterback room with all the walk-ons, all the quarterback coaches. Taven's not in the picture. That they kind of all knew this was coming. It's going to be fascinating, because Tennessee's recruiting one of the top quarterbacks in the 25 class nationally. It's almost like back in the 90s when Tennessee was just stockpiling quarterbacks. You want to try and get 2 years separation between each of them. So, Nico can run the job this year. And Zach asked, do we think we'll see Nico any this year? I think you might see some small packages here and there because he is just such a freak athlete.
Well, he gets 4 games and still keeps a red shirt. So you get 4 games. You can make an appearance in 4 games.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably see some little tiny specific packages for him here and there. But you got to remember, Joe Milton is really, really good.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want to take that guy off the field. So, I think we'll see little packages here and there, nothing significant. I don't think they'll redshirt Nico because they only have so long with him. When his NFL window opens, that dude's gone.
Yeah.
So, I think Joe plays this year. He leaves. Nico's the starter for the next 2. Whoever that 25 kid is that they sign red shirts and gets 2 years in between him and Nico, then he's the man. And they start the sequence of signing a guy every year, red shirting him, putting 2 years in between, and just stockpiling big time quarterback after big time quarterback.
Well, and I mean, people say, well, is there any data to back up that you can, make a landslide in recruiting or, draft board projections and stuff like that in just 1 or 2 years? Yes, his name is Hendon Hooker. That is the thing. Hendon, he had not even 2 full years as a starter, and he was in the running for the Heisman. So I mean, it only takes 1 year, quite honestly. My goodness, Joe Milton is already making waves after 1 game.
Yeah,
as the
NFL guys are already talking about him.
Yeah, there was a video that came out this afternoon. You're probably thinking the same thing I am, of Derrick Henry talking about Joe Milton. He was on the podcast of Bussin' with the Boys. And now obviously we can't, we're not condoning all of the things that happen on that podcast. Yeah. But there's a very interesting interview with Derrick Henry, and he straight up, he was asking them and the producers on the show. He's like, the new quarterback for Tennessee, he was like, he played with Orange Ball. He's nice like that. And he said, is he coming back next year? And they were like, yeah, he's coming back. And he goes, oh, he's nice like that. I mean, he goes, that dude's big. Like, and then he was talking about how he goes, it's like he just barely throws it and it just woo. And that's what he said. It just goes. And he's right.
It's hard to hear, but if you watch it back, Taylor Lewan is, one of the co-hosts, plays tackle for the Titans. former Michigan guy. At one point during that interview, he says he needs to come back to Michigan.
Oh, interesting.
So Michigan alum with J.J. McCarthy returning is sitting there saying, no, we need that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did see that video, but that's actually not what I was referring to. There's been a lot of NFL draft scouts already talking about Joe for next year. Off one game. They just watched him prove that he could throw a touch, and they're like, we always knew the cannon was there. We just needed to see him pick things apart short and show us he can do that.
Absolutely. I mean, the video that came out just this week of him on one knee throwing the ball 60 yards in the air. I mean, what in the world? That is not normal.
People don't understand. There are Division I quarterbacks right now that can't throw the ball 60 yards in the air off 2 feet with a crow hop.
Yeah.
And he was doing it off a knee.
Yeah.
Like,
it was interesting. Joey Halsey was in a press conference I can't remember if it was right before or right after the Orange Bowl. And he was talking about how when we're running plays, you cannot stop running the play because, you may not be open at 20 or 30 yards, but you could be open at 60. And talking about how Joe, like, that's still in his range. Like, he'll get it to you, I mean, that's incredible.
Let's be honest. We're saying we're in Hail Mary range at the 20.
Yeah.
Like, he can throw the ball 80 yards in the air.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. So, of course, a pro scout is going to be drooling over this guy. He's 6'5", 245, and can throw the ball literally the length of the field. So, no wonder they're drooling over him. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. Zachary said about my attempt at Nico's last name. He said, "Nice try, though. I would just stick with Nico." Yeah, I agree. Lamaleava. That's pretty close. I mean, people would know who I'm talking about. People would know who I'm talking about. I'm just saying, like, they would know. And Zachary made a good point. He said, really 2 games. Don't forget the Vandy game, but I guess the Vandy game was more running than Joe. That's true.
Yeah, the Vandy game was hard to evaluate because they were playing in
it was raining.
Pit. Everything was wet. They were trying to be careful and not get him injured because they had no backup. It's just a hard one to evaluate off of. I tell you, when you think about guys like Nico, and there's a couple other Samoan kids that Tennessee's recruiting in the 24 class, Bob Kessling has to just be having nightmares every night.
Well, he ain't going to have to worry about it because he's retiring after this year.
That's true.
He announced that. So he's not going to have to worry about it. Maybe Brian Rice. Maybe he's the guy who's going to have to deal with all that.
Hey, he can do it. He does it every day.
A lot happened in the past couple days. Oh, hey, one other thing about former Tennessee quarterbacks. JT Shrout announced today that he is entering the transfer portal. He is now the 3rd quarterback at Colorado who has entered the transfer portal since Coach Prime took the job. And you know what? I kind of understand that because literally at his introductory press conference, Coach Prime asked his son to stand up, and he goes, "Hey, Shadur, stand up." And he goes, "There's your quarterback right there." The kid hadn't even enrolled in school at Colorado yet, and he was already naming him the quarterback. So
what's ironic about that, if it hadn't been his son, that was actually an NCAA violation. But because it's his son, he's not held accountable to the same rule.
I mean, that was just I think that might be the first time in the history of college football coach introductory press conferences that they introduced the quarterback who wasn't even in the school yet as the starting quarterback. That was bizarre.
The best part was when he tried to play it off and but he's going to have to win the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just named him the starting quarterback, but he's going to have to earn it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Lady Vols in action this Thursday. BasketVols are back in action on Saturday, and that'll be the next time we go live. We'll go live Saturday night. So we appreciate everybody joining us this week and this evening. This was a fun conversation. We got one more comment here. Oh, hey, good question. Zachary said, "I'm going to throw you a curveball. Do you think Coach Heupel is going to be like Philip Fulmer?" All right, so we can interpret that question a few ways. So I'm going to start with one way.
Are we talking
I
weight
think
gain or what?
Well, that's a fair question. Do we think? Well, I'll say this: last Tennessee football coach to win a national championship was Phil Fulmer. Will Josh Heupel win a national championship at Tennessee?
I believe he
think?
will.
I don't see how we could sit here right
will.
now. Yeah, I don't see how we could sit here right now and honestly say, nah, he's probably not going to. Because, I mean, my goodness, when you look at what he has done since January of 2021 to January of 2023, it's mind-blowing. Literally, the program was crumbling and just falling apart. And he has a team that should have made the playoffs in the second year. I mean, that's incredible. And so Zachary clarified his question about winning games. Will Josh Heupel be Phil Fulmer-esque in how his winning percentage and stuff like that? Well, so here's my take on that. Phil Fulmer said straight up, it's not about X's and O's, it's about Jimmy's and Joe's. Can you get the right guys in there? We know Heupel and his staff are good X's and O's guys. We know that. So if he gets Jimmy's and Joe's in there, yeah, wins are going to come in bunches. And we saw that this year. He doesn't even have the Jimmy's and Joe's he wants in there yet. Not all of them. And we already saw what can happen. You know, you think about some of the new guys.
Today, the final recruiting rankings. Tennessee had 3 kids in the top 50 and 11 in the top 200.
Yeah. I mean, their ability to evaluate talent. I mean, like Nathan Leacock, for example. Dude shot up the rankings this last go around here because people saw just how incredible of a player the kid is. People were talking about him during bowl practice, and he just stepped on campus. Imagine what it's gonna be like after a spring training, you know, and being in a college weight room and weight nutrition program for 8 months leading up to the start of the season. Who knows what that kid's going to be able to do this next year?
Well, and this past weekend was potentially the most talented recruiting weekend in the history of the university, and almost every kid walked away saying they were leaning toward Tennessee.
Yeah, like openly, kids were saying they're my number one after that visit.
Yeah, and there were some absolute game changers on campus. I mean, guys that everybody in America wants badly. You know, I think there's 2 other things that play into that as well, and I think it's where Heupel's very similar to Coach Fulmer. If you look back in the early to mid-'90s, Tennessee administration and boosters were all on the same page. And Danny White has done a fantastic job of assembling a really good administration and getting all the boosters on the same page. So I think that's a big part of it. You know, Jimmy's and Joe's matter, but so do facilities and NIL and an arms race. Money's got to count.
Absolutely.
Just ask Florida. NIL money matters.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing he has going for him, Josh Heupel does a fantastic job, not just on his staff, but on his support staff, surrounding himself with excellent people. And that was one of the things that people always said about Coach Fulmer. It wasn't just his assistant coaches. His support staff were fantastic individuals who did a really good job. And what's ironic is a lot of those people are now backfilling those same roles for Josh Heupel. And some of Fulmer's former assistants, I think of like a Steve Caldwell, is working in the back office under Josh Heupel. Heupel knows what wins at Tennessee. He learned from talking to people and gleaning what Fulmer did that was successful, and he's replicating it.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting when you think about the direction the program is heading. There's no way you can't be excited about it. Zachary said, "Thanks for taking my questions. I had fun. Hope I didn't ask too many." Absolutely not, man. You ask me questions. That's what makes this fun. Yep. I totally agree. That's why we did this. Just, you know, we talk about Tennessee football after the games. You're like, hey, let's do it online. Have other people join us, talk about it too. So we love that. Please ask as many as you want. We thank everybody for joining. We've had a bunch of people watching this live, and that's awesome. Thank you all so much. We got people on YouTube, on Facebook. We're also live streaming on Twitter. And so next time we'll be live will be Saturday night. We'll post a time leading into that. But we thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Hey, I say it every time. I'll probably keep saying it every time. Danny White has some great advice when he said text a buddy. Well, I think what he really meant. Nah. Yeah. Appreciate you, Zachary. Thank you, man. I think what Danny White really meant, if he was here on this podcast today, he would say, you know what, guys, you need to text a buddy about the Vol Bros. Let people know about them, man, because they're. I'm assuming that's what he'd say. We try to be fair and unbiased and that kind of stuff, but I mean, we're not. But I mean, like, we are a little biased, and that's been one of the funniest things in some of the comments. People just like yesterday, somebody on our prediction, which by the way, Russ and I both predicted Tennessee to go 11-1 next year. Is somebody yesterday go, you delusional Vols fans predicting your team to go 12-0, typical. And I'm like, buddy, neither one of us did that. So you probably ought to go back and watch the video again. It's fun, man. It's fun to talk with people. So we really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Be on the lookout for Saturday night. We look forward to seeing everybody then. We hope all of you have a great evening.